Alright guys, so welcome to Design 1. Our first project is called 9 lines, and also there's the 12-line assignments. So these are 2 parts to a very simple but at the same time kind of complex assignment. And you're going to be working first with 10 thumbnails in your sketchbook. You're going to, please, if you can, print the instructions for the assignment that's already been uploaded into the course folder on eCampus. You're going to be able to find them there. And the idea is that you understand how lines work within a composition to create shapes, linear direction, and movement. Also, I'd like to add that you can create a sense of space or depth into your composition, depending on how you use lines within each of your configurations. So for the 9 lines, you're going to be working with 3 kinds of lines. You're going to be utilizing 3 horizontal, 3 vertical, and then 3 diagonal lines. The first step for this assignment is to actually create 10 4x4-inch thumbnails into your sketchbook. Depending on the size of your sketchbook, you could work 2 on each page, or perhaps 1, depending on the size of your sketchbook. Maybe you have a larger one, you can fit maybe 4 on each page. It doesn't really matter. The thumbnails are to give you ideas of different configurations, and I'd like for you to pay close attention to the interaction between the edges and where the lines converge. That's very important. Now, the other part, or the second part of this assignment, is working with 12 lines. So in addition to the 3 vertical, 3 horizontal, and 3 diagonal lines, you're going to incorporate 3 circular lines. So again, prior to that, you're going to create 10 thumbnails into your sketchbooks. Now this time they're going to be rectangular, they're going to be 4 by 6 inch. Before you select the best of the thumbnails in order to create them or transfer them into your Bristol pad 14 by 17 paper, okay? If you have any questions, please make sure to watch this entire video, and if you still have questions, send me an email, or we can actually this week we're going to meet, and I'm going to send a message about what times are we meeting, or perhaps during virtual office hours. So please don't be shy to reach out since we're not meeting in the classroom, okay? So with that said, let's just watch some demonstrations. And by the way, some of them are really bad, some of them get a little bit better, some of the thumbnails before I go into transferring it. And also I'm going to show you how to create the larger final design, okay? So again, just to recap, you're going to be creating 10 thumbnails, 10 examples. Please don't be satisfied with the first one, and try to select the most interesting one. I can help you with that as well, virtually. And then you're going to select one of them and actually enlarge it and work it into your large Bristol board pad. Again, send me a message if you have any questions. And without further ado, let's get into the assignment. Thank you. All right, everybody, I'm gonna give you guys a demonstration on how to work on the 9 and 12 line assignment. So I went ahead and printed my instructions, and you're going to need the 14 by 17 Bristol paper, and also your sketchbook. I just kind of made up this folded paper as in place of the sketchbook. Just let me show you guys my sketchbook here. So you would have to work on pages like this, and just kind of went ahead and gave an example for you guys here. Let me set this aside. You're gonna need a ruler, some pencils, your micron pen, And also, just before we start, I'd like for you guys to kind of get in mind or have in mind the number and letter that are in some of your pencils. So there's a family of pencils. Whenever you see a number, and the higher the number on the B family, that means that the graphite is going to be much softer. That means you're going to be able to create a darker mark with it. Now, as the pencils move into the H family, the higher the number, the graphite is going to be harder, and thus you're going to have a much lighter line when you're creating a mark. So the first thing you need to do for your 9 lines assignment is to create 10 4x4 inch squares in your sketchbook. You know, your sketchbooks are a little bit bigger than this, or should be, as they were in the list. And the first thing that I'd like for you to do is to just make sure that you have the idea that you're going to be working with 3 kinds of lines. You're going to be working with 3 vertical lines, 3 horizontal, and then 3 diagonal lines. And you're going to create different configurations of these lines. So, for example, I'm going to use my ruler here, and I'm going to create 3 lines. I'm going to be working with this. So I'm going to create number 1. Let's see. Here, number 2. And number 3. Again, I'm just kind of winging this. I don't want the lines have to touch. I think it's a nice idea if they touch at least 1 or 2 of the edges of your square. So I have my 3 vertical lines. So I'm going to be working with my 3 horizontal lines. I'm going to make here this one very small. Was 1, this is 2, and then now I'm going to be, I think I'm going to add the 3rd line over here. Okay, and now I have to add 3 diagonal lines. Like I said, the diagonal lines, it's a good idea if they touch, or any of the lines if they touch 1 of the edges, but that's not necessarily true. This is a very open-ended assignment, and in a way you get to decide where is the placement on the lines. Now, the more variety you add, the more asymmetry, the more interesting your design is going to be. And then now I'm going to add my 3 diagonal lines. So I'm interested in kind of attaching these 2 edges here to create a sort of a shape. So that would be 1. And then why not? I'm just going to go here. That will be 2, and I need 1 more line. And let's see, I'm just going to three. So I have 3 vertical, 3 horizontal, and 3 diagonals. Now, one thing that I can do, as you can see in the example, is you can make the lines, you can open the lines, you can leave the lines completely dark. So the lines don't have to be just one little line, but actually you can shadow, and this can become a whole line. So this is what I'd like for you to now experiment in your sketchbook. Or perhaps you can start with a very simple design like I just did, and then in subsequent ones, because you're going to have 10 varieties, right? 10 chances to experiment. Okay, that's 1. As long as you leave the lines and you're sure, you know, that you can count the 3 lines, that's okay. Then, let's see. I'm actually interested in turning it around so I don't get graphite on my hand and I don't smudge my work. So even if it's on the sketchbook, being careful not to make my marks so that they would smudge and then just get everything kind of dirty. Okay, so try to keep your hand out of this area because this you're going to have rather dark marking in there. Okay, and then I think that this is a little bit boring, to be completely honest with you. So I think what I'm going to do is just create this line a little bit thicker. And instead of this being just one line, I'm just going to make it, instead of a thin line, I'm just going to make it a thicker one. Oh, the other element that you would like to have on hand is your kneaded eraser. And that way you can keep your work as clean as possible. Okay? And so on and so forth. One thing that's happening in our example is that no lines actually touch the edge, or as you can see, there's some open areas on the edge of the composition. So for example, I could actually go and erase this edge here. And remember, based on our introduction, we're now working with lines, of course, but when we close a line, we're actually creating a particular shape. Okay, I'm very dissatisfied with this one, so I'm just going to continue. So I was saying that the first example that I did, I'm very dissatisfied. That's okay. We can continue on. Remember, you're going to have 10 of these. Okay, so I am going to use a harder pencil, which is going to prevent some of these dirty works, especially when you're working on your large Bristol paper. You want to keep your surface as clean as possible. Okay, and again, we're making kind of making this as our sketchbook. Okay, so I'm going to continue working with my vertical, horizontal, and diagonal lines. So how about if I start working with my horizontal lines here? So I'm just going to do my first horizontal line over here, and it's going to be a very thick line. I'm interested in making it rather thick. Okay, and then I'm going to be working again a little bit thinner. Okay, so that I have two diagonal lines over here, and then I have the third one over here. Okay, I can actually make it to where it connects with the first diagonal line that I did over here. Okay, so and then I'm going to create or add a horizontal line. I'm actually going to add a horizontal line at the bottom here. So that's one. Kind of creates like a horizon line, if you will, and then I'm going to add a second horizontal one. Now remember, in the lecture, think about what does a horizontal line suggest? And typically a horizontal line suggests tranquility, calmness. Okay, so I'm interested in this horizontal line going in front of this diagonal, so I can actually go in and erase my bottom line, the one I did before, and then I'm just going to, so I'm interested in these intersections of lines. Okay, and I'm just going to redraw here. Again, try to get a little bit lost in your work I think that's when you're lost and you get a little bit relaxed, that's when interesting things start to happen. Such as here, I'm starting to kind of create a sense of depth by overlapping this second horizontal line here on top or in front, quote unquote, of this diagonal one, okay? And I'm actually gonna do the same here. Now this time I'm just gonna go over my first, or the diagonal that it's right here. Another thing that I can do is, instead of creating, I'm actually going to erase. Let's see, I want this on top, so I'm going to erase. Right here, what's in the front. Notice how, okay, some shapes start to emerge in this composition. Okay, much more interesting than the first attempt I did. And again, it's totally fine. You don't have to worry about creating masterpieces. You're just trying to create interesting compositions here. Compositions that have, I'm interested in symmetry, and I'm also interested in space. All right, so I have 1, 2, and then 3 horizontal lines. Now I'm going to work with my vertical lines. So I can actually work as thin or as thick as I'd like for the lines to be. I'm interested in creating a very fine horizontal line here. Okay, so that's one. Wow, I'm liking this composition much better. Notice the first one I did, which, oh no, I dislike it even more. The more I see it, I dislike it even more. And then I'm actually going to go into, let's see, this edge here, and I'm interested in just a very fine line on this side. That would be my second one. And then I can do my third one. How many places? So I can actually go even smaller. And I'm interested in having this line on top of this band here. I'm going to use my kneaded eraser. And here I am creating sensation of depth by overlapping lines. Now let's pay attention to some of these intersections. I find them interesting, some of the most interesting things to happen in a composition. So perhaps I'm interested in creating, it's a good idea to use your ruler. Now remember, again, try to get lost. It's a good idea to play some music while you're doing this. Or perhaps you want to watch your favorite Netflix. You can create of a focal point in there. You can actually extend it if you're interested in that. And one thing that I'm going to post, I'm actually going to post a, or even on our virtual meetings, you can show me your progress, and that way we can discuss in detail and I can give you guys some feedback. That's something that I've already set up on Blackboard. I'd like to do it through Blackboard Collaborate. So there's a link in the content menu that shows, I think it's called virtual office hours, if I remember correctly. So again, notice that you can play with this composition as much as possible. See, I'm interested in this. So let's pretend that we have our 10 sketches, and I'd like for you to, look at each one and find which is the most interesting one. We know that this one is not it. So this one is actually going to be thrown out. Let's say that I have really interesting compositions here, and that's something we can discuss. Now it's time to actually translate it into our big Bristol paper, okay? So I'd like for you to work with a pencil in the H family. That's gonna make your life a little bit easier because they're much easier to erase. Oops, one of my sponges actually walked in. So one thing that I'm going to need is, again, my very hard pencil. So it's very easy. Now we're going to create a 13 by 13 drawing. So here's task 1. We're going to create a 13 by 13, it's not really a rectangle, it's actually a square. And there's 2 ways that you can do this. So this is 14 by 17. So we have to fit 13 inches square into our 14 by 17. One easy way to do it is to actually measure half of an inch on 3 sides. And then we're gonna have a longer band, if you will, of white area. That's automatically is going to give us 13 by 13. So we can measure here, and I'm leaving, just created 2 little marks here, half an inch away. So I'm going to start half an inch away from here, and I'm just going to draw a line all the way to, again, leaving here half an inch. Okay? And then if I go down here, roughly, I'm going to mark half an inch. Can't really see from this distance, but then I have about half an inch over here. I can actually draw here. To 13. Okay. Move this a little bit forward. Then I'm going to connect here my 2 lines, and they're 13 inches. And now I have a 13 by 13 square here. So what I'm going to do, say I like this composition here. So I'm going to translate this composition, and I'm going to make it larger. So I suggest you work with a pencil in the H family, again, because the graphite is going to be harder, and it's going to leave it's going to be more difficult to smudge, if you will. Also, remember, the end result of this work is actually going to be in marker. So if you wish, you can start working with your micron here directly, although I suggest you start working with pencil, and then go over with marker. I'm actually not in the most comfortable position here to demo, but my best here to be very accurate, guys. Accuracy is rather important in this work. And then also you want to create a very clean edge. If I was working in this studio, I would be on the table, working on a table, and you guys would be sort of surrounding me. I would be in the center, and then it'll be much easier to for me to lean over this, especially this edge here is going to be a little bit more difficult, but bear with me. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. A little bit I went over here. Again, this is the farthest edge from my eyes, so it's a little bit harder for me to see. All right, you want to cover your marker so it doesn't dry out. And you're going to translate your composition. So I started with my diagonal, and of course, it's not mathematical. But you want to use a very fine pencil to translate, and then you can make a few, just a few changes here. Like I think I'm going to make this edge here a little bit finer. Right here, goes all the way to the top. Again, you want to work with your pencil first. Oh, I'm missing one diagonal here. Again, think about engaging the four edges of the square, okay? I'm going to be working here. One good idea, it would be to actually measure. That'll give you the most accurate straight line. So I decided to just make it this edge here about 2 inches wide. Since it goes behind, all right, and so on and so forth. I'm going to stop the video and then do a little bit more drawings, and then I'll show you what. So now I have all of my composition translated into pencil and or transferred onto by hand onto my Bristol paper. Going to clean a bit of the edges, and again, an H pencil is going to give you this definition here, this very sort of clean edge, clean definition, okay? Because the graphite, again, it's very, very hard. It's tightly compressed. And making this edge here a little bit darker. Okay. So now I'm ready to start working with marker. So I'm going to take my micron and so for example, the areas that I'm going to darken, you're going to do those by hand. If you have a Sharpie or if you have a thicker micron, it's a good idea to actually work with it. Do not use any ink for this project, okay? And again, this is going to take a good deal of time. So you do want to use your rulers to work on those edges. And so on and so forth. So I just finished this edge or this shape here. Now I used a Sharpie. It's not on your list of materials, but if you have dark areas like this, it's going to make your life much easier. So you can actually continue working until you're finished. So the large square is actually going to be a, just one. You're gonna have the 10 4x4s, and then you're gonna have one final work. And I'll be happy to help you decide which one is the most interesting one to translate into the big final one. Now, the same thing, you're going to work with the 12 lines, but instead of just working with 3 diagonal, 3 horizontal, and 3 vertical, you're going to add 3 curved lines. If I can, I'm going to send you guys examples of these works that I did, from students' pasts. I usually show you guys a lot of examples whenever we're in the studio. So that's what we call task 2. Now you're going to be doing on your sketchbook 10 thumbnails that are going to be 4x6 this time. Again, remember, you're going to be working with 3 vertical lines, 3 horizontal, 3 diagonal, and then 3 curved lines. Okay, so that's the addition. So that's why we call this one 12 lines. The first version, the first assignment is 9 lines, or the first task, and the second one is working with 12. I hope everybody's clear on this. So again, 10 thumbnails. You're going to divide your composition as you wish. I suggest you do them in pencil. However, you are welcome to use any materials that you like. Oh, one thing that I wanted to share with you guys, make sure that you keep, when you're working with markers especially, that you go ahead and clean your ruler, the edge of your ruler, quite often. It's going to get, markers and material in it, or ink, and that can actually make your work dirty in future assignments, okay? So let's see, I am interested in doing here, I don't know, I'm interested in doing, let's see, kind of an intersection here. Okay, and then I'm going to do another one. Now I'm going to add some diagonals. And then of course I'm going to add some curved lines. You can use a compass, you can actually use a bottle or a container that you have at home, kind of like a Tupperware container, to help you create, very sort of, I have all kinds of materials in the studio at Richland, but we're going to have to be creative working in this environment. So for example, I have a lid here, and I can actually work with a couple of curved lines and make them, and so on and so forth, okay? So now, again, make sure that you're paying attention to the intersections of the lines. I think that's going to make your work rather interesting. And then also the idea of overlapping, right? Or even, these connections here can hold the key for making rather interesting work and not just dull works, okay? I could also, I could use this eraser here, open up some of my lines. Okay, so I have 1, 2, and then of course I'm going to need some more. Perhaps I just want this line coming into those curved lines, and then coming into on top of this area. See, this is a 6B pencil. It's very thin, soft graphite. Just look how dark it's getting very quickly. In the studio, I mean, sometimes we use like a big can, you know, when we're transferring these designs onto our Bristol paper, we use big cans of coffee. I always serve coffee in my classes. Unfortunately, of course, you know, it's something you're gonna have to provide for yourself, but I usually do. You know, maybe you wanna go into and create a bit of a wave. Okay, so I have 1, 2, I need one more horizontal, unless I can just go in and create a horizontal here. And I have 3. And I can make this darker just because I think it'll add some visual weight. Notice how quickly one can work on these sketches, okay? And then I have 1 diagonal, and, or I could even say this is 1 diagonal, this is 2, and then I'm gonna add another one. And, let's see, maybe the diagonal here, just kind of like as a compact, that's a 3rd one, okay? Or maybe you could, you know, it's again very open-ended. I want to push this area here, make it dark. When I mean push it, it's that it's going to feel like as if it recedes to the background. Now, the only difference with task 2, and again, this is task 2, is that we're going to translate it onto our big Bristol paper. My light. And it's going to be on a rectangular shape, not onto a square. And the shape is going to be 13 by 16.